Hey, yo, what's up, fellas? I got Lex Loser on today from TikTok. He talks a lot about Black liberation, Black issues, socialism. You want to introduce yourself?
Yo, what's up, people? It's Lex. Lex Loser on TikTok. Actually, I just got banned. It's Vex Loser now. Vex Loser.
Where did you get your name, by the way?
It's Lex Loser. It's supposed to be like a play on the supervillain.
The supervillain from Superman.
Yeah,
Of course.
yeah. He's bald. I'm bald. Uh, yeah, it just works. It just works. It just works.
I like that. I like your thinking. Let's just jump right into it. The Palestine issue has sort of ignited a civil war with both within the American Jewish community and also Black America over whether or not the Democrats and liberalism serves them anymore. What are your thoughts on this debate?
Um, I think mostly, unfortunately, like this issue is bigger online than in real life.
Hmm.
Um, I do think it has revealed how some of us still haven't learned. I think a lot of people are still waiting for like simple answers from our complex problems. Um, that's pretty much it. Yeah, it like uh I think a lot of black people, especially who are in activist spaces and organizing spaces, a lot of us were kind of shocked, a little bit like a little bit shocked to see that the people who had just like championed this anti-state rhetoric when it came to like police brutality and things of that nature. I think we were just a little bit shocked that some of us, especially some of us who had like been platformed because of this rhetoric, they weren't really willing to take it all the way, or they haven't done the work to understand how to take it all the way.
Right, right. What do you think really is causing this discourse? The heart of it is it just uh like absorbing the contradictions of America itself? Being reflected within the community. Is it just overly online discourse? Is it like planted by Democrats or
Um, yes to a lot of that. Yes to a lot of it. I don't think it's just one thing. I do think it is in large part just absorbing the contradictions of what it is to be American, as well as with another intersecting identity, as well as like like just being black and American. It's a contradiction within of itself, and I think a lot of people struggle with that, especially when you have so many examples like Barack Obama and Kamala as like representations of just the empire not being as rigid as it comes off, um with its aesthetic, more than
right?
anything.
Right. Yeah, I think Obama really represented sort of a moment, I think, where a lot of people were drawn into liberal politics and this could even help us transition to our next question, like how do we reconcile the tension between sort of liberal identity politics and class-based politics while also maintaining that yes, identity and intersectionality are important, because the way that liberals use identity politics is, I think you and I both know this. It's to put a black or colored or gay face on the empire of oppression. But also, still, identity politics is and intersectionality is important. So, how do we reconcile these contradictions?
Right, like you said, bro. Like, if we're using identity politics in the same way liberals or conservative use it, it will always come off reductive or redundant. But like, if we keep it in the context of class or class conscious people, um and that's necessary. You have to keep that, um like the class consciousness. It's necessary, especially if you're talking about working class people in the states, because we are such a diverse group. So like you said, you like intersectionality. It's just you don't want to be an identity reductionist, you don't want to be a class reductionist. You got to understand that class is a diverse group. It's a diverse group. We are all working class, but in order to like tend to working class people's needs, you need to have some sort of like identity politic, or at least understand the identities within your state. especially if we're talking about organization. It's a hard line to straddle. I will give you that. I do get why some people kind of lean more side to the other and lean more side to the other. And I think it's because that's just the nature of the state. Like that's like in some
Mm.
forms or facet, you will need to lean more into one thing than the other. Um, yeah.
Absolutely. I also think one thing that's very hard for us to understand and really get a grasp on is the working class itself is divided. I mean, as much as we want to like say like, oh, let's just all get together as workers. There's sexism within the working class that divides us. There's racism within the
Hmm.
working class that divides us, and we have to
Yep.
overcome these issues if we're ever going to unite as workers. Really. Um,
Right. Right. Absolutely. It's like even the people, you know what I'm saying? People who want it bad, and I feel like all of us do. I really try not to like demonize people, even though some people do some demonic ass shit. But we all want the same things. It's just about how we go to get there. So recognizing that we are different, yeah, it's absolutely necessary. Recognizing that even the most left leaning, who have the most prominent class consciousness, they understand class to the T. You know, they gotta look inwards when it comes to sexism, like queer phobia, anti-blackness. You gotta look inwards. Ableism. You gotta look inwards, and you kind of see it, especially on the online discourse, with how people think they have it and then they kind of falter and end up perpetuating the exact same systems that we are trying to like relieve.
Absolutely. You're a real life organizer too. How have you seen the real life practice discourse to differentiate from our more online discussions, which get into absurdity sometimes, like absolute I hate to say it, but clownery. Some of the discourses that go on within online spaces. Is there uh is real life more nuanced? Is it better? Like what is the big change here?
Infinitely more nuanced, man. Infinitely more nuanced. And it's because something about the the internet space is like it's good, you know, and it is real life, you know, it is real life. But the thing about the internet, and I've been thinking about how I'm gonna say this on my other platforms too, is that nobody comes in good faith. And it's
Mhm.
because of the nature of the mediums, especially if you talk about mediums like TikTok and stuff like that. It's not really there to like harbor a discussion. And I can even say that, you know, with this knowledge, I tend to not really use TikTok and things of that nature to be completely having a full discussion with people. A lot of times I am just agitating or propagating because I understand that it doesn't matter how nice I say this shit. There is going to be the person who engages with it on bad intentions. Someone who feels triggered or just doesn't have the knowledge or doesn't feel like doing the work. Or that sometimes people don't even feel like I have the right to say what I'm saying. It's not even what I'm saying is wrong. It's just that I don't have the right to say it. And that's all fine and dandy, but like those personal reasons really come out on the internet. And in real life, it is completely different. Don't get me wrong. Not everybody is a fucking socialist when you go talk to them in real life. But let me give you a real example. Me and my comrade are hanging up posters. It's Know Your Rights posters. We're going downtown. We're hanging up posters. And some dude was like, hey, what's that poster about? We're like, it's anti-ice. We're telling people to know their rights, that then not to let ice in. And this guy's like, you don't like ice? Man, I love it. And in that interaction, he was trying to antagonize. In real life, it's not the internet. You're not really quick to go and see why this person is antagonizing. You have the option to be completely like, nah, man. And this is what I said. I said, nah, man, that's not it. And I kept walking. And then because he saw us kept putting up posters, it piqued his interest. And he came back to us and he was like, man, you know, I was just joking, which is like what people on the internet do too when they get, you know, kind of called out. But it was like, I was just joking. And I kind of wanted to know your opinion on the Ukraine thing. We chopped it up with this man for like 15, 20 minutes. The class consciousness is there, bro. It's right there. And through these real discussions you have with people, you push them You push them further, like the Overton window was already moved so right. You push them just a little bit to the left. This man was making connections between Ukraine and Israel and even brought up Taiwan. And I'm just like, so you're already knowing, bro. You just need to, and I said that. I was like, bro, you are already peeping the contradictions. You just got to connect the dots on who is. And I was using words like ruling class, the billionaire class. And he's, you know what I'm saying? He's already connecting the dots. The wheels are turning. So it's infinitely different. It's infinitely different.
Absolutely. I think it reminds me of that one tweet. You could say you like grilled cheese sandwiches and somebody would come up and say, "Oh, you hate burgers?" You know.
Like legitimately, bro. It's like, and it'd be like, it'd be a whole like TikTok only recently give you the feature to go 10 minutes. People used to be like, why didn't you say all this? It's like, I had 1 minute. I had a minute to say everything I wanted to say. And you're mad I didn't do an entire dissertation. Like the nuance is definitely easier to have in person than online. But also the people just people really don't want nuance online. They don't.
Absolutely. I also think that it's easier to not be antagonistic, especially if you're a communist or a socialist. You have to be able to talk to people that are reactionary. You can't only be talking to people that are agreeing with you, right? You know, that's
Yeah.
you gotta meet people on their level. They have to see communists and socialists as people who can engage with them on their level, and meet them, and also come off as nice people, right? Like you should be able to. I mean, obviously, don't allow racism, don't allow sexism, don't allow shit to fly. You know, push people back whenever they're doing those kinds of things. But you got to be able to both communicate with people and also come up as a nice person, so people can say, "Well, you know what? I don't agree with everything he says, but he's a nice guy, and you know what? He's onto something, right?" Like that's how you get the ball rolling.
Right.
Yeah.
No, exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. We've talked about just sort of class reductionism, things like that. What about how liberals use race, sex, gender? Why do you think it's so hard for so many people to break out of this idea that if we just put a black face on the empire or a gay face on the empire, that suddenly all our problems are solved? Like, why do you think that is such why do you think that is such a predominant idea?
I think it's because people can't see the end. They can't see like that revolutionary optimism is out the window. They got a lot of like revolutionary fire, is what I like to call it. Lots of people do, you know, especially when it comes to having like an identity that is not WASP, but that's not white. You know what I'm saying? American, like Christian. As long as you're not out of those, it's really hard to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And that's why they just cozy up to people. They see Kamala as the light at the end of the tunnel. And it's just like, you know, it doesn't have to be this way. Like the things we think, the things that forced our identities to be oppressed in these ways, it doesn't have to be that way. We don't have to be defiant of those things. We could stop the whole shit. I just feel like it's people who, you know, there is definitely some selfishness in it, but I try to be a little bit compassionate. Um, and see that like these people really they're struggling with like understanding.
Right. It's also I think it's also just how media presents itself, right? Like, oftentimes we are presented in the media like, "Oh my god, there's a woman CEO. Women are liberated." You know, like women have broken
Right.
through the glass ceiling. Never mind the fact that this female CEO, she's literally getting her position by exploiting global South women in sweatshop factories, right? Like,
Man,
you know, or
like literally.
you know, a woman at the head of the American empire. Never mind the fact that she's dropping bombs on working class women all over the world. I think it's almost similar to fascism, where fascism will the way that liberals use it in any politics, and of course, you know, snarky people in the comments are going to be all like, "Liberalism is fascism." I know. You don't have to leave that comment. Um,
Just scratch a liberal, you know what happens. Scratch a liberal. You're right, you're right, you're right, you're right.
of
But
course, of course, but fascists will say, okay, look at this rich white guy, right? He has the same exact interests as you because you're both white, right? So forget about class, forget about the proletariat and the bourgeois. We're both the same race, so drop the fight. We have the same exact interest, right? We're both light skinned, we're white. I think that's what liberals do. They'll say, okay, look at this woman dropping bombs on working class women halfway across the world. You're both women, or you're both black, or you're both Hispanic, or whatever have you, Chicano. Forget about the class, right? Forget about that you're a worker and she's bourgeois. Forget about that she's helming the empire and your class, the working class, is the victims of the empire. You both have the same identity, right? It's that, we have class reductionism on the left, right? The real left, socialist, communist, but we also have liberal class reductionism that completely ignores
Yeah.
it's an aversion of our class reductionism.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Lex, how did you get into organizing? How did you become radical? What was that story?
Um, uh, I don't know, man. I like from a kid, I've always been on some fuck 12 shit. Like, it really has started from just a kid, the police antagonizing us, like when we were playing football and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Things of that nature helped me bubble up and get to the space that I was. Now, I will say it took me a minute to realize that I needed to be part of an organization. Took me till about, after college, I realized that, my individual effort to what I was doing, what wasn't going to be enough. And it did help me, connect to my community, see my community, all sides of it and stuff along that lines, but it wasn't enough. And I needed to get with like-minded people. But I think, when I became like a socialist communist was after the like initial Black Lives Matter protest in like 2014.
Mhm.
Um, Things of that nature actually made me go, okay, so like we all know this, we all know the problem. We saw it. We've seen it a million times. Like at this point, there were so many videos. It got to a point where they were absolutely showing these videos on purpose. It got to a point where like I saw so many people get killed on camera that I was just like, all right, man, like I'm done, like not protesting, but us being in the streets isn't helping as much as it should. We need to do something else. And that's when I started to read more communist works and more socialist works and actually go, okay, so the Panthers had the solution. The Panthers had the solution. It wasn't a perfect solution, but that shit was getting some shit done. It was putting some grease on the wheels.
Yeah.
It was at that point that I was just like, all right, so let me look into them, finding out that they're actually communists, Marxist Leninists, walked around with Mao's little red book. And I'm just like, okay, man, I've heard this word a million fucking times. I've heard its variation a million fucking times. And actually, now that I think about it, it's been fearmonger to me so often. Why, when I can't even describe it? Like I was saying that as someone who would consider themselves a radical at the time. I was just like, not just a radical, not an anarchist or anything like that. I was really good about not labeling myself before I did the work to understand what I was labeling myself as. It's also why I stopped calling myself a liberal. Because I realized they weren't on the type of time I'm on. I was talking about burn some shit down. They were definitely always talking about reform. Um, but yeah, it was that. It was wanting to know more about my situation, why I was going through the shit I was going through, why people in my community were going through the shit I was going through. I wanted answers, and I also wanted solutions as well. Like, yeah, I had questions. I wanted to find out. I had questions, and then I found out I needed to ask better questions, and then I wanted solutions, and then I started looking into better solutions.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, I mean, going back to my point, like, this idea that we and the ruling class have the same interest just because we're the same race. I mean, Kamala Harris was building police cities. The Democrats were building police cities, that were going to harm so many communities of color, and yet we were being told by the media that people of color and this woman at the top, right, this woman of color at the top have the same exact interest somehow, even though she's literally building institutions to oppress them or, Biden, what have you. Um, I I think that's just really, uh, what's so that's really what's so problematic about how liberalism uses identity politics. There's nothing inherently wrong about, addressing sexism, racism, and that acknowledging that the working class is not completely unified, that we have these internal contradictions. But it is wrong when you're not using a structural analysis. Or Lex, do you agree? Do you disagree?
No, bro. I'm 110% with you, bro. Like you could never solve those issues without first solving what class is, why the issues start to begin with. That's where people would call me a class reductionist, but it's a work in progress. Like I said, it's a work in progress. You have to use both formulas. You have to understand how class oppresses black people specifically, and etc. Like that the dangers that women face even in a classless society, why we need like security measures and things of that nature, education. It just makes sense.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we cannot ignore that the black working class has been extra exploited, like super exploited. That's what many
Absolutely.
black radicals have and black Marxists have pointed out, that just acting like white workers and black workers, especially within the American context, have always been treated the same is ridiculousness. It is ridiculousness, and that's not to reduce class. Class is always the basis for our analysis, but it is to acknowledge a material, concrete reality instead of
Right.
abstracting a real process. Um, Many black radicals oppose electoralism as a, a method altogether. Do you see any utility within that?
How I say it like this is I'd never vote for president. I would never vote for a president. I know how the electoral college works, and they're not gonna sucker me. It's really simple. I'd never vote for president, but I'd also never tell black people not to vote. Um, and not well, I'd tell them not to vote for president, but just I'd never tell them not to vote in general. And I just tell them to never trust the voting process, to be educated on the voting process. Over here, I stay in LA. They had rent control and shorter prison sentences as measures on the last ballot. Like that's worth putting a check in a fucking box. It's worth it. I think it is. Although ultimately, I want people to like understand that I think calling it stuff like damage control or voting for the lesser of two evils is doing a lot. It's doing a lot. We're putting way too much faith into a system that we know is geared against us. That we could never get any type of actual, we might get some concessions through voting through electoralism, but it could never be the piece of the pie that we deserve. It could never. So the utility, I think in order to find utility within voting is you have to be organized. It's one of those things where you can't just all be like, okay, we're all the black vote is this, the Latino vote is this. You know what I'm saying? It's like we're falling into their categories of bullshit because we know through the civil rights movement, they say it was like 20% of people in America. We always assume like it was all black people, but we know that's not how the fuck the world works. It's not actually a racist. Well, it is a racist world, but it's not a race realist world for real. That's not how it actually works. So I think the utility there can be, but not while we're you know picking between which ruling class politician is going to help us not get poop water. Like it's not it.
Yeah, yeah. It's ridiculous that San Francisco was the reason we now have poop water. I that's
What?
it. It's crazy. Because San Francisco is the one who was in the Supreme. I mean, this is supposed to be like the most progressive city in the whole and the most
Bro.
democratic city. Like that's another that's another subject. That I'm getting distracted. But
N- n- no, no, you were like, yes, bro. Like, yes, exactly.
yeah,
It's just like it's another fucking contradiction. Like we're putting faith in people who have faith in a system that's based on exploiting us. It's never like going up and voting for them. It's just like you don't put. Yeah, it's not worth it. It's not.
yeah. Let me summarize your point to the best that I understand. So you're basically saying electoralism does have some utility, but it only has utility if you're organizing outside of it and you are not relying on it as the only way to get things done because you'll never really liberate yourself through it.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, I think no, go ahead.
Like sorry, like voting blue no matter who, it's not a good strategy. It's not a good strategy. It never has been a good strategy. Actually, let me stop. Let me stop. Let me not disrespect. Let me not disrespect. Because I do, you know, like I said, I want to be compassionate. I don't want to be disrespectful to, you know, the black people, my ancestors who actually like were going through the shit and didn't have any other means of action outside of organizing. Some it might have worked and it might have saved them in certain instances, stuff like that, but I truly believe that this country is on a one-way track somewhere, and no type of voting is going to stop that one-way track.
Hmm. Absolutely. And especially how it just doesn't deliver its promises, right? Damage control never actually does damage control. It just does it's like a car crash. Like all damage control does is it slows the crash, but it's still gonna crash, right? Like it's
Right.
and the fascism's still gonna come there. It's perhaps a slower march into fascism, but it's still a march into fascism, and it never stops the march into fucking fascism. I think that's one of the hardest things for a lot of people to wrap their heads around. And you know, it's a tough conversation to have. That the nuances get lost within online discourse because there are people who are trans who are afraid of what will happen under Republican administration, right? So, yeah, and my heart does truly go out to them, right? You know, there are people of color who are just absolutely afraid of the anti-DEI attacks that have been happening and what that means. Speaking of DEI, how do you feel about this anti-DEI program that's been going on? Is it what are the effects of it?
Um, you know, so, like, let me not act like I know everything about it, but to my understanding, it was government funded programs, corporations, all that got funding from the DEI programs. They're no longer getting that. I'm seeing a bunch of military members no longer, you know, like they're not opening doors up for black military members. Trans people are no longer allowed in the military, things along that nature. And like, I don't want to sound insensitive because there are a lot of people who are losing their jobs, but at the same time, we are witnessing like a band-aid being ripped off a bullet wound. I'm not really happy about the fucking band-aid. Like, you know, it sucks that it's happening, but at the same time, if it was that easy to do, well, what the fuck are we fighting for real? What the fuck have the Democrats who've been putting this shit in place been doing? Is this really what they've been doing this entire fucking time? Like,
Mm,
it's really not worth it to me. It's not worth it to me. I feel like it is a band-aid on a bullet wound solution, like everybody says. It's just, you know, I feel for the people who are losing their jobs, but at the same time, well, except for when it comes to the military. Ha! I'm sorry. I just that's I'm sorry. It's just like seeing less black people in the military, that's a win every single fucking time. We're already represented in it. So it's just like less black people in the military, fine, that's good. I know a lot of trans people depend on the military for their medical things of that nature, and I really wish there was another way
mm.
because I do feel like they prey on queer people because of things like that. Well, they prey on us. It's the military. They're fucking predatory as fuck. But it's just like, I'm sorry, bro. I just can't. I can't vibe. I can't get with it. I can't act like this is something I would fight for. A more diverse military. Fuck out of here. No.
Yeah. Yeah, I think one thing that gets lost in a lot of conversations about damage control is, they're dividing the working class on purpose. Like, all these contradictions that exist
Mhm.
within the working class, sexism, racism, they purposely put some certain groups' rights above others in order to divide us and keep us weak. And when we show unity and say, "You know what? As a trans person or a person of color, I cannot allow, for example, the Palestinian genocide to happen."
Right. I'm so glad you brought it back up. Literally the first question. Yes, that. Um, yeah, bro. Like it all connects. When they saw that, when they see that black people are up there screaming free Palestine, and it's the same fucking black people who are out there saying Black Lives Matter, it it fucks it up.
Mhm.
It just gets to them. It just gets to them because that's solidarity for real, and it is based on identity. But what happens is you expand. Why are these two identities like marginalized? Why? Oh, okay, it is class. You go back to full circle moment. It is class. Oh, this is how we got here. Like, we have to remove those chains if we want to remove these. And yeah, it really fucks it all up.
Yeah. Yeah. The world is fundamentally interconnected. And I just think if we play into the ruling class's divide and conquer strategies, we do not liberate anybody. And we've really seen that, especially in how Democrats have so quickly dropped trans people, right? Like
Man, man, man.
I mean,
Like it was like it
no,
was the easiest thing for them. And that's also what I wish people who were like cozying up to these identity politics would see is like, bro, those are not your kin. Those are not your people, bro.
mm,
You know what I'm saying? They turned on you that fucking quick, talking about, what did Kamala say? She said something along the lines like, I think we should all follow the law.
mhm.
The law is transphobic. Like, it's been transphobic. It's been killing trans people. It's been marginalizing them. What do you mean follow the law? What happened to your whole LGBTQ pro pride shit? What happened to that? Gone real quick.
And I think
Real
it's
quick.
because so many people allow themselves to be divided, right? They said, you know what, I'm going to prioritize trans rights over the Palestinian genocide, or I'm going to prioritize these rights over the. I'm going to prioritize people of color in within America's rights over the Palestinian genocide. And what happened? The Democrats let you divide up the working class, and the Democrats are now rolling back on both trans rights. Gavin Newsom, the clown of a governor from California, was
Yeah.
recently on Charlie Kirk's podcast, and he said transphobic things. And the Democrats,
Charlie Kirk.
yes, he was. You didn't know that?
No, I didn't know Gavin freaking News. Like, he's been called a sociopath. Not only, I'm sorry, I don't mean to use that word so lightly, but he's been called very bad things before. But to get on Charlie freaking Kirk's, oh, that's crazy work. That's
You ever
crazy work.
seen his family? His family looks evil. Like that's just a
He
super villain family. Yeah,
He's got that evil look. I'm not gonna lie to you. He
yeah.
looks like you know what he looks like? A fucking politician. Slimy as fuck.
He looks like a comic book villain. You know.
Dead ass. Dead ass.
uh, I don't know. I don't know. I think he fights superheroes at night. I'm not gonna lie.
Bruh.
Yeah.
I wouldn't put it past him. He hates home. Like, how do you, dog? Yes. If you've seen the way he talks about homeless people, you know there's something deeply unsettling about that man. That's what I'll say. There's something unsettling about that man. So, but that's
Absolutely.
crazy. He was on that podcast. Actually, crazy work.
Absolutely. And especially the way he smiles. And then he said, I don't believe in trans women within sports or something like that. Like they've dropped, and then now
God.
Democratic party members, strategists are dropping DEI. Right? Like this is the only reason that really the Democrats had going for them was that they'll protect people of color in the trans community. And I think because some people allowed themselves to be divided over solidarity with Palestine, with homeless people, they allowed for the Democrats to drop trans issues and DEI. And now what's left, right? Like this divide and conquer strategy always hurts the people who are being divided and conquered, right?
Yes. I remember an interaction I had with um someone who had many intersecting identities, is what I'll say. And they were talking about, this is the lesser of two evils. We got to do what we got to do. And they said a sentence, and the sentence, and I like scoffed, like, because it's really funny. Uh, but it's like fucked up. But they were like, don't you understand? Some people will be left behind. We can't save everybody. And I'm looking at this queer person of color who is also disabled. And I'm just like, listen to what you're saying. Like how can you how can you say something like that as someone with your identity? If anyone is getting left, it's you.
Mm,
It's you all the way. How can you not see that they're going to abandon you the moment it gets convenient? And what the fuck did they do? This is well before they really started on their lesser of two evils bullshit. I think this was before October 7th too. I was like, what do you think they're gonna do? And what the fuck happened? They abandoned their whole trans agenda. They abandoned their whole Black Lives Matter, defunding the police agenda, and then they abandoned. They let like disabled people out to dry, bro. There's no
mhm.
contingency to stop their medicines or anything like that being repealed. They didn't come up with no type of contingencies to help those people, the people they had just made their whole platform on in 2016. Like, oh, we're the party that represents the marginalized. It's like you abandoned them the moment it got too hard, and it never actually got that hard. They just suck. They just suck. Oh my god.
Absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of people forget that the Democrats had to be pressured to pass the 1964 Civil Rights Act. You know, John F. Kennedy was not going to pass it. It wasn't until years of protest and, direct action by grassroots organizations that Lyndon B. Johnson finally passed it. It wasn't just handed to them because people voted right. Um, and in addition to that, I think something that a lot of people forget is that yes, the oppression of the world, right? Oppression within the world is class-based. It is proletarianized, bourgeois, capitalism, and things like that. But also the basis of oppression for the world is also based on anti-blackness. That has also been a root of oppression all across the world. Europeans, whenever they came into new regions, and implemented in frameworks, class frameworks, and racial frameworks, it was always rooted in that original anti-blackness. And so, liberation all across the world is rooted in black liberation. It is rooted. It is all connected. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say all our liberations, all these identities, women, black people, Indian people, brown people, whatever have you, are all interconnected. You cannot just liberate one group and expect the others to be left behind, as that person was saying.
Absolutely. 110% agree. Absolutely. Capitalism started what, like 400 years ago. Transatlantic slave trade, it started coincidentally around the same time. Now, I'm not saying they're directly linked, even though I'm not saying that either, but you know, it just served the purpose. It served the perfect purpose of this rise of capitalism, this stronghold.
Yeah. Yeah, if I would recommend the book Slavery and Capitalism by Eric Turner, I believe is the author, in which he argues that actually the capital for starting the Industrial Revolution within the UK was actually gotten from the profits that the English got from selling slaves in the transatlantic slave trade. So, um something he said was like every single brick and every single engine and locomotive within the Industrial Revolution was paid for by money gotten from the blood of slaves, you know? So,
Mhm.
I think you can be a little bit more radical and actually say that slavery and capitalism have always been interconnected to some extent. To some extent,
Yeah,
you could also argue like
yeah.
feudal, whatever, like it was a transitionary phase, what have you. Um, Almost every single Black liberation movement was destroyed by the state, right? You know, the FBI, COINTELPRO, the Black Panthers, Malcolm X was most likely killed by the FBI. Martin Luther King was most likely killed by the FBI. Why are Black rights so dangerous to the American government? Even just milquetoast things like please treat us as human beings or equal citizens.
It's really simple. Like, the liberation of black people means the liberation for like everybody.
Mm,
I hate the term privilege, but it's almost because it's almost always abused. But to some extent, Black Americans have privilege in comparison to Black people in the Congo, for instance. And the things we would have to do to liberate, like if we're all in the mind frame, okay, we're going to liberate all Black people in America too. So if we're the things we would have to do to liberate the Congo, to like pay restitution and reparations back to the Congo, especially as like a Western imperialist nation that is directly involved in the exploitation and of the people, the land, etc. It wouldn't be anything less than revolution. Um, it's just our oppression as Black people is directly linked to capital,
mhm.
like point blank. Period. Capitalism can't exist without a slave class. It just can't. And that is what Black people serve as, especially in places like the Congo. I mean, to like, we already know where all the minerals and stuff come from, our phones, all this modern life and entertainment. None of that would exist without like slave labor implicated, like on Black people and Black bodies. Just wouldn't exist. So that's why it's a threat when we contextualize that. When we contextualize that to the state, especially as the Western nation who is doing the things. Once we have that context, piece brick by brick, it crumbles, it falls apart.
Yeah. Yeah. I also think that it just unravels everything that America stood for. I mean, this nation was founded on slavery. It was founded on anti-blackness. And if black people get their liberation, it just unravels everything that America has ever stood for. Um everything that America has built, everything and what America has stood for and what America has built are not good things, right? Like they're not whatsoever.
Literally,
So it's
literally.
if black people get liberated, it means that indigenous people have to get liberated. It means that workers have to get liberated. It means that, so many things would have to follow. And that's why the state has to repress black liberation. I mean, look at the black movements of the 60s and the 70s. What did you have? You had Asian Americans right next to them. You had a
Right.
Hispanic farm workers working with the Black Panthers, right? The Black Panthers when the fuck, I forgot what they're called. When Cesar Chavez and his group were doing the grape strikes, right? So people weren't going to buy grapes picked by farm labor. The Black Panthers literally stood in grocery stores in the Central Valley of California with guns to keep people from buying the grapes, right? Like that was the kind of solidarity that they
Yeah.
had. This is my history professors in a local city, so I don't know if this was like a generalized trend, but within this local city, they were literally standing there saying, "Nobody's gonna buy lettuce, nobody's gonna buy," things like that. It was so that was the kind of solidarity that we had. Like black people, by liberating themselves, they liberated Asian people, they liberated Hispanic people, and they liberated workers. They got better workers' rights for so many people.
Yep.
So I think that's why it's so dangerous. I also think it's embarrassing to America, right? That the creation of a sort of black subclass within the proletariat is embarrassing to everything that America claims it stands for, right? It claims it stands for liberty, justice, equality for all. And yet there's this walking contradiction that gives America a dose of truth that in fact it never stood for those things. And when in your system you have people that are challenging the fundamental ideological foundations of your system, you want to repress them as much as you can. And I think that's why black cities are black communities are policed so much, almost like a military occupation zone, because their very existence stands against what America says it claims to be. Lex,
Literally, yes.
agree, disagree?
Absolutely. No, I completely agree, bro. Completely
Okay.
agree. Especially with the military occupation. Absolutely. They don't allow us to build community because it is a threat. Point blank period. They'll just have a little something here, a little something there, but never the ghettoization of our communities, our neighborhoods and stuff like that, all purposeful, because when we form a real healthy community, it serves as nothing but a threat, because we call into question I like how you said the embarrassed thing. Like it just calls into question the entire fabric that keeps this country knitted together.
Hmm. Hmm. America is, I mean, I know that a lot of liberals want to imagine that America is just a community of immigrants. And, like they'll always try to like say this thing like America has always been founded on immigration and solidarity and love for each other. I'm sorry, but America was founded on hatred. Like,
Hatred, like the purest nonsensical hatred that you could think of. It was built on like genocide, bro. I don't think you could ever get past that, and that's something that I always you gotta always think like the first people of this land still exist. They're exploited. I saw one thing where it was just like some of them be paying $17 for a muffin.
mm,
That's a whole nother, you know what I'm saying? That oppression has never stopped. The military that got those people to that point, that shit has never stopped. The government apparatus that put those people at that point and then went ahead and enslaved a bunch of other people, and then thought it would be great to go around the world and exploit everybody else, currently has a gun at the world's head. Yeah, that apparatus is still alive. Why lie about that? Why act like just because of identity politics, you got a black person here every now and then, it's not still the monster that it is.
Absolutely. I think that's the one dangerous thing about capitalism compared to other modes of production that humanity has had, and that's that capitalism does allow some people from the bottom to leak through to the top, and it's never the majority. It's never and it's never truly liberatory, right? But on paper, a poor person can get to being a billionaire. Now, it's most likely never going to happen. Or a person of color can get to being a billionaire, right? It's most likely never going to happen, but on paper they can. And so these very, very few statistically small people that win the lottery and get to the top sort of helps capitalism say in its propaganda, oh, oppression doesn't exist. Oh, this system is great. Oh, forget about the class struggle or
Right,
something like that.
right.
Compared to other systems in the past where we had a really more direct cast, right? So the last name you were born under, that's going to be your situation in life forever, right? If you're born with the wrong last name, you're going to be
Yeah,
stuck in that class forever. I,
right,
that's the insidious thing about capitalism. It will allow you to have a black billionaire or a woman CEO, but it will still continue the oppression, right? It'll still continue the exploitation, but it'll say, you can get to my position. You can get to my position. Now, it is less likely than you getting struck by lightning, right? Like it's
yeah. It's pretty thin. It's pretty thin. The numbers are pretty thin,
you
but still, there's that possibility, and that's the American dream. That's the
absolutely.
dream right there, man.
Absolutely. And I think that's what Obama represented to some extent for, and
Bro,
I know I'm outside of the
absolutely.
community, but black liberalism, this is what Obama sort of represented. It was that, struck by lightning, but we can get into a position of power and therefore these structural issues are fine, right? We can sort of overlook them a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, dude. That's why I have such beef with Obama, because I do remember being. I remember. I think it was his second term. His second term. I was old enough to vote. Like, I think I was just 18 or something like that. I was old enough to vote, but I was hearing drone strikes. Hearing about drone strikes. I was hearing about all this shit he was doing. I was just like, whoa, 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 whoa. You can't be talking about Obama, bro. Like, he understands. He's black. He understands the struggle. He understands what he's been through, what we've been through. And that rationalization was in my head, but still the drone strikes were just, I didn't vote for him. Like, it's something I'm still very proud of, but absolutely, bro. He represented like progress. Point blank period. He represented progress. And it was just like, no, not progress in a way that you should be thinking, because it, yeah, it's a really sick fucking thing. Like, it's really sick. Like, if I put on my conspiracy theory hat hard enough, long enough, I think he is very sus. Um, but absolutely, he represented progress, and this idea that, it is hard for us to be black in America, but if we just stick to it, pull our bootstraps up, we can overcome anything. And it's just, that's just a bullshit lie.
Mhm.
And even if it is true in some instances, it's not worth what we're sacrificing.
Mhm. I think the wake up call for me, and obviously I'm not black, but I when I saw Obama get into office, I was like, oh my God, maybe racism is a thing of the past. But I think the wake up call for me was when Trayvon Martin, got
Yep,
shot under Obama's administration. It was like, well, maybe racism isn't gone. It still exists. We just have a black face on the police state.
yep.
That was sort
He
of
also signed that. Signed that police bill. I think it was like people who retaliate against police. I can't really remember the entirety. I hope I'm not butchering, but he signed that bill that guaranteed police funding or something like that if someone had retaliated, or guaranteed this. And then he went up there and essentially couldn't even say what with Trayvon Martin, that he shouldn't have been killed. He went up there and did a whole sentimental bullshit. Like, I remember this speech, but not too much. I try not I try not to relive my aggression, because that shit pissed me the fuck off. I'm glad that is when you saw it too, bro. Like, I'm glad that's when you saw it too, because that was just a reaffirmation for me that this man was full of shit. This system, like, he was just full of shit.
Yeah. Yeah. Recently we've seen a rise of black Trump voters. How do you describe this phenomenon? Is it a result of the black middle class? Is it simply because the community is not a monolith? And again, encapsulates the contradictions of America?
Um, yeah, first and foremost, we are not a monolith. It sucks because you think we'd at least all have the same assessment, but no. But I think just like black Democrat voters, I think both groups are like contrarian, struggling with anti-blackness, internalized anti-blackness, of course. Um, I just don't know how else you could cozy up next to a party that enslaved your people. Like, you're cognitive of what these people have done to your ancestors. Um, I don't know how you could cozy up to that party.
Republicans or Democrats?
Both,
Okay.
both, both. It's just I don't understand how you could see what they've done and not and think that everybody else in the community, and that's my thing right there. It's just like the bulk of the community is Democrat, but also the bulk of the community is not politically engaged enough to call themselves a Democrat. A
Mm.
lot of us don't call ourselves Democrats. We just vote for Democrats. And I think that's been lost. I think especially with these younger generations that vote blue no matter who, that type of narrative has made us forget what our political line was. And it was vote for the politician who's not trying to kill you the most. It was never trying to show allegiance or loyalty to something that could ultimately never serve us. That ultimately, like, is part of our oppression that justifies it. So
Mm.
I do see the rise in like black conservatives and stuff like that. I just feel like it is just a natural progression of living with the American contradiction. I don't really see it as a sign because as just as much as I see more black Trump voters, I see more black communists now too.
Yeah.
So it's just I just feel like it's the natural progression of where we're going as a what's the word, the a Western superpower. I just feel like it's the natural progression of it. Um, and like I said, I try to be compassionate. I try to be compassionate. Especially with people who are telling me that they don't know what else to do. And as a communist, as a socialist, if I'm not giving them options, I'm not doing my job for real. So I try to be compassionate about this shit. But I just think it's a natural progression of the I do and we aren't a monolith, but it's funny that these problems, black conservatism, like being black Trump voter, and like I say, black liberalism, those contradictions, I feel like they all stem from the same thing. So it's low key monolithic. Um,
Mm.
it all stems from that anti-blackness. That I'm not saying that these people think that they know better than the black community, but I don't think they have a positive understanding of our history enough to, at the very least, not shame people for not voting a certain way.
Mm. I'll also say that both conservatism and communism, especially when people are formerly liberals, there's two ways you can go when you see that liberalism is sort of a scam, right? You know, that liberalism doesn't work as truly liberatory. And that is, you can become a communist and you can recognize the issues of capitalism and that liberalism isn't shit. Or you can say become a conservative and say, oh yeah, the reason that the country isn't working is because of the Democrats, and because of something wrong with the Democrats, which is that they're progressive or pro woman. It's the right root. It's the right recognition of the problem, which is that liberalism doesn't work, but it's the wrong solution, right? You know, it's falling into
Literally,
reactionary politics.
like libertarianism, like
Hmm.
like absolutely. We all recognize that capitalism ain't shit. Like I like to say, like everybody recognizes that rich people suck. Everybody does. We see it.
Hmm.
They take advantage of everything. We're working. We're all working multiple hours a freaking week, multiple jobs. It's obvious, but the solution, the praxis at the end is where it really truly matters.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, going to your libertarians example, a lot of libertarians will say that capitalism as it works right now isn't the right way. You know, we need to get to like a true capitalism that has never really existed, but somehow we'll get rid of corporatism or like billionaires. And then people who used to be Democrats that fall into conservatism, like Candace Owens, they'll be all like, "Oh, the issue is DEI or affirmative action or
Yeah. We were too
LGBTQ,"
woke. We were too woke.
and then
Actually, women should make sandwiches. Like, like, yeah.
I don't know how she got that one, but yeah, somehow.
I don't, bro. I don't know. If you listen to Candace Owens stories too, you're just like, oh, it's just straight. Like a lot of people, it is a cope. A lot of
Yeah,
people, the politics, especially how they engage with it, it's very much, because most of these people, these Trump voters and stuff, electoralism is their entire shit.
yeah.
They don't know how to be politically engaged outside of that. So how could it not be a cope? Because electoralism in big part, voting in big part, is a cope. Is a cope with the fact that you don't have that much power, especially when, most people understand the electoral college, bro. That's some bullshit, but people that's some crazy shit to say that your vote doesn't actually count the way you think it should. Like,
Mhm.
and still vote. It's a cope. It's a cope, unfortunately.
Yeah. I also think that both conservatives and liberals, I mean, as communists, they're both liberals, but whatever, let's just play into it. They both use, you know,
I get you.
yeah.
I get you. I get you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they both use token sort of minorities or, token LGBTQ people in the exact same way. Like conservatives will be all like, "Oh my God, look at Candace Owens or Dave Rubin. Conservatism isn't so bad because they're saying our ideas." And liberals will be all like, don't question Kamala Harris, sweetie, because she's a black woman of color. So, you know,
Literally, they use it. Yeah, they weaponize it. I think it was the RNC. This RNC was genuinely like so cringy and embarrassing. I watched both of them. I watched both the RNC and the DNC just to see what flavor of fool we are gonna get. And it was literally the most pandering, like pro LGBT RNC I've ever seen. Like they were weaponizing the identity the exact same way. They had someone rapping up there. They had was it
they had Snoop Dogg.
Vivek? They had Snoop Dogg,
Yeah.
bro. They had fucking Snoop Dogg. It was bad, bro. It was bad. But
You know
yeah,
what's
they had
crazy?
women speakers, they had LGBT speakers, they had all these diverse speakers. And I know the real RNC was like, what the hell is going on? why is why are these woke folk here? But it's because they pander. They have
Yeah.
to pander. It's the only way they know how to talk to us.
Yeah. Yeah. They've got their one gay, Dave Rubin, in the,
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah. And the
Like you can't call
Democrats.
me homophobic because
No, go ahead.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No, no,
No,
no. That, like literally that. You can't call me homophobic because, well, I've got black Republican right here who introduced Trump. How are you going to call him racist? It's like, okay, bro.
oh my God. Have you seen that one Trump speech where there's a black guy in the audience and Trump's like, look at my black guy over there. That's my that's my
No, I don't think I have seen that one, but that sounds exactly like Trump. Like, oh God,
I
this
will say he's
one.
okay, look, as much as a fascist as Trump is, he is a natural born comedian. Yeah,
He is, bro. His comedic timing, even when he's being dead ass, like when he was talking to Zelensky recently,
yeah,
I was just like, why is he straight like playing his ass, like punking his ass, like low key clowning him, just like, no, you're not gonna tell us what we're doing. You're in a bad predicament. Like, why are you roasting this man on national TV? He's an entertainer. That's something we gotta like all come to terms with. And he always wanted that. He always wanted that shit. You can tell with all these bullshit shows he had, The Apprentice, all that shit. He wanted to be an entertainer, and now he is the world's biggest entertainer.
absolutely, absolutely. And it is entertaining. I mean, it's scary, but it is very
Man,
entertaining. It is very entertaining.
yeah, He got it. He got it.
Going back to what we were saying about like, yeah, the Republicans put like a rapper there, Snoop Dogg, and then like whatever. The Democrats do the exact same thing. It's like Kamala Harris is right there speaking of the DNC. Don't you see that? Isn't that so amazing? Now, don't actually look at what our policies are doing, right? Like, don't actually look at how
Hmm.
she's talking about building the fucking wall. Right, she has a racist cop on who was part of Trump's administration in the most recent DNC, or that she's bombing Palestinians. She's a woman of color, so shut up, sweetie, and just swallow the pill, right? Like it's the exact same thing. It's the exact same thing. Both are tokens.
Exactly the same thing. Yep.
Both, yeah, yeah, both are tokens. I mean, I think it's very hard for many people to see. Um, well, one thing I also want to talk about, and then I'm Asian American, Indian, Chinese. There's a disconnect between the Asian American community and the Black community. And I think it's in terms of how white people sort of treat us, because white people, they favor Asian Americans, right? They're sort of the quote unquote desired minority, right? They work the hardest. Apparently, they're educated the best. Studies have shown that white people, if they had a non-white neighbor, they would prefer like a Chinese or something of that sort. And I see many,
Wow, that's crazy.
yeah,
Chinese?
yeah, yeah, or
That's
like
crazy.
East Asian
The
family.
Okay, the xenophobia though just goes like because they switch. Like, I feel bad for those neighbors, like because they'll switch real quick the moment China announces some new shit. Like, they'll get into that fucking China bag really fucking quick. So that's kind of crazy to hear, but it does make sense. Like, they're definitely not trying to live next to no black people.
Absolutely. And I think some Asian Americans, actually, unfortunately, a lot play into being the model minority, right? Sort of like white people's favorite minority. Do you think that how do you think we can just how will we overcome this disconnect between the Asian American community and Black community, especially when Black rights have been so fundamental to Asian rights in America, in South Africa, where Indians were organizing right aside the ANC. How do we stop this divide that's happening?
I think when it comes to race, um, I think when it comes to race, this is a good question. But I think when it comes to race, we have to like get to that class conscious understanding.
Mm.
Like, and I know that's hard, um, to like not overlook race, but like to get to that, to be class conscious, you have to understand anti-blackness. And I feel like for the Asian people, Asian Americans who want to like create community, like real community outside of just this tokenization that the white people are placing upon them, to get there it has to be on class conscious basis. They got to understand that even themselves, like even as the one that they want the most, they're still marginalized, especially when you take into consideration like how they do talk about people from like mainland China, people from like mainland Japan, like the weirdness that they have with like talking about their cultures and things like that. It's very fetishistic, fetishization. You get what I'm saying? Like,
Feministic, yeah.
it's very much, yeah, it's very much that. And once you realize why it is that, why it is fetishistic, you go, oh, okay, it has everything to do with capitalism again. It all circles back
Mm.
to they can make money or they can devalue our labor. They can devalue our labor just based on our community or things like that. What are those loans, not those loans, those programs that Elon was talking about? And this is
Oh,
where
yes, I was gonna bring that up. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. It was called like it's just a worker's visa. We can just call it that for now. It's like K9.
workers visas, right, where these workers who are clearly educated enough are coming over here, and there's no way they're going to get paid the same as like a natural born American. There's no way they're going to get paid. That's the whole point of the work visa. These like, and they could also fire them anytime they want. It's like like that indentured servitude in a sense. This type of like, yeah, that's the only way I think like the Asian American people and African American people will be able to truly unite is to understand that like we are all just separate pieces in this game. Like we just all have different, well, to them, you know what I'm saying? We're all fully capable, but we all serve a certain purpose for the empire. They're never gonna bring in people to replace themselves when it comes down to the racial lines. It never will happen.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely.
and that's why you only see one or two of us up there. You know what I'm saying? It's not many of us. Most of us are still in the working class struggle.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think you're so spot on that, first of all, um we are dehumanized in almost in almost an opposite way, right? It's like positive dehumanization versus negative dehumanization. It's still dehumanization. you know uh Asians and Asian Americans will be dehumanized positively, even in that tweet that Vivek and Elon were saying with the workers visas, where they wanted more Indian workers. Do you know the exact analogy that they used, Lex?
No, I don't. What was it?
Okay, so they said, just like black people are better basketball players, Indians are better tech workers.
Crazy work, crazy work. But it's just like, yeah, that analysis isn't dialectical at all. You know what I'm
Mm.
saying? And it's just like that's their hard line though. It's not to actually think about things deeper than what they are. But yeah, that analogy completely perfectly displays the dehumanization. It's like there's a saying, especially because people figure out ways to dehumanize black women specifically by almost memifying them. They say superhuman still isn't human. You know what I'm saying? They think of Asian people as these super smart, techno savvy um people who cut off like social norms to get to their work, just hard workers. But it's just like that's still a dehumanization that there's no positive that comes from it. Definitely a bunch of people can get rich, but I feel like a lot more people, and I don't want to overspeak, I'm not Asian American, but I feel like a lot of people get burnt out, or they feel like they have expectations to live up to, and when they don't live up to those exact expectations, because at the end of the day they're just human, it affects them mentally, it affects them physically.
No,
They're
no,
like
you're
it.
spot on. You're spot on. I mean, as somebody with who struggle with ADHD and neurodiver whatever, like so many people have been all like, you're Indian, you should be making like $100,000 or $200,000, or you should be getting like straight A's in class. Especially people who are mentally disabled. I work with mentally disabled kids, especially mentally disabled Asian kids. It's a lot harder for them because they have all these. Even teachers put higher expectations on them. Like you should be getting straight A's right
Crazy,
now.
dude. That's crazy. That's
Um,
crazy.
but that is the thing though. Positive dehumanization, where they're saying you're such a good worker, you're such a good wage slave, is almost it's the same kind of tokenization that they do towards black people. They're lazy.
Absolutely.
It's just inverted. It's just inverted. It both is dehumanization. And I think going back to your earlier point, that we can come together on the fact that we're both workers, we're both exploited, and we both have the same interest, which is overthrowing white supremacy and the ruling class. Because even when they like you, they don't like you as a human being, right? Like they don't
Man,
like
you're a
your.
representation. You're a representation to them mostly that you're not a they're not a racist. Like
Mhm.
it makes them feel better to know that their community is diverse, even if the diverse members of the community had to fight tooth and nail, go through all types of different struggles that they never went through to be there. It makes them feel good. It helps them with the whole we're a country of immigrants bullshit.
Yeah, yeah. Moving on. A lot of organizations, and you were within Black Lives Matter, correct?
No, I wasn't
Okay.
I was just popping out. I wasn't a Black Lives Matter organizer. I was just popping out. And if I'm being completely honest with you, I'm not saying I was there before them, but I always say this, and I will always take this history with me. Before Black Lives Matter was an official organization, we were just a group of people out there screaming abolition. That's what
Mm,
we really were. That's what we really were. Before it was an official defund the police movement, that got co-opted by like we were the community outside. That's what we were,
Mm.
screaming Black Lives Matter. But I would never say I was an official organizer, even though, I do know some organizers. I do chop it up with them and things of that nature.
Yeah, of course. And Black Lives Matter was a little bit contradictory. It couldn't really decide whether it wanted to be incorporated into the Democrats or want to be more radical. For example, it opposed Trump's sanctions on Cuba. They released a statement while at the same time cozying up to like Democratic Party organizers. A lot of these organizations, what I'm trying to say, have sort of become instituted into the state. Like liberal politics. How do we avoid that?
Man, I've said it a billion times in this talk, a billion times, but class consciousness, bro. We need
Mm,
class conscious analysis. Like, we need black communist parties and socialist organizations.
mm,
Like, and I mean, I'm that's the hard line. That's it right there. It's like, and I won't even get on here and be like, join this socialist organization, join this communist organization. I want you to join an org or a party that calls themselves socialist or communist. And if you don't got one, start one. Um, just join it. Be part of it. And I'm not talking about a reading club. I'm talking about a club that like actively integrates itself into the community and shows the community that they will stand for them. That's what I'm talking about. It's the only way. It's the only way because um there's so many grifters, so many social climbers. Like, the state will co-opt. Like, if they're not co-opt, like the state only has two measures when it comes to like identity movements and things like that. It's to co-opt or it's to straight up dismantle that shit.
mm,
If you are not on the end of the dismantling, you're going to be co-opted. They're already figuring out language and ways. They already have agents, and it's not as super secret CIA as it is, but at the same time, that is who we're fighting. That is who we're going against. It's very divisive. It's very powerful. You know what I'm saying? It's centralized. Like, they have it all. So the only thing that will stop that is being hardline socialist and communist.
mm,
It's really hard. Like, it's not an infallible plan. Like, don't get me wrong. Not every socialist or communist party is infallible. And that's not the goal. The goal isn't to be infallible. It's to iron sharpen iron until we get to the damn place, till we get there. But it's like, it's much harder to do agent work as a socialist or a communist unless you're like straight up ratting on people. The
mm.
work you do when you're in a socialist or communist party or organization is community work. It's really hard to corrupt that. It's really hard to take away from that. And it's really easy to point out the people who aren't about what they say they're about.
Right, right. Yeah, because when you're only going off of identity and you have no class consciousness, you have no class basis, it's so easy for you to become incorporated into the Democratic Party, right? Like it's
Literally, they
very
throw a check
easy.
at you, and that's what happened with the Black Lives Matter movement. It's like the organizers, I actually don't even know their names. I'm gonna be completely honest with you. I went to so many Black Lives Matter events, not in LA, but like just in, well, plenty in LA, but just around,
Mhm.
plenty of protests, plenty of marches, plenty of community talks, all this shit. The moment they throw a bag at these people are out of here.
Yeah.
These people are gone. They're co-opted. They lose all the talks of revolutionary fire. I actually want to put in note, like, Black Lives Matter, when I was out there protesting before 2020, before 2020, no disrespect to those like organizers and all that stuff, no disrespect,
Mhm.
but we were screaming abolition, not defund the police. We were screaming abolition. And I remember coming back to a protest years after. I think this was after Trump. I think it was right after Trump. Sorry, my timeline's messed up. But I remember coming back and wondering when the chance went to defund the police. The state had already co-opted us, bro. They had already put on that fucking kente cloth and
Uh,
nailed. Like, yeah, man. Eh,
Right. So you're saying defund the police was already a sort of a moderation of what was really originally radical.
Absolutely, bro.
Mm,
110%. 110%, bro. That's why, because like when you talk abolition, if you are actually someone who wants the abolition of these things, you got to understand that one, first of all, we're talking about imagining a whole new world. You can't just talk about abolishing the police when you got people out here who are doing neo-Nazi fucking like marches and shit like that. You can't just talk about dissolving like things and apparatuses like the healthcare system that people depend on. You can't just talk about that shit without first getting to the nitty gritty of why these things are here, who do they serve, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when we were saying abolition, of course, the pushback is going to be like, what the fuck you want us to do when crime is happening? Well, that starts the conversation of what is crime? Why are always certain people the criminals? What does jailing of the criminals do? We talk about recidivism, and the conversation always boils down to capitalism, defunding the police. That conversation never devolves, like never dissolves into capitalism. A talk on capitalism because at the very end it rejustifies why we need the police. We need better training for the police. That's why we have these fucking cop cities. Like we need better training for the police because they're killing too many people. And it's just like, no, this is exactly why we were screaming abolition in the street. This is why we were burning shit down because yeah, because that's the only way. That's the only understanding that makes sense. Any type of defunding shit, nah, fuck that. Fuck that. Fuck that.
Right,
But
right.
by then, the liberals had already got a hold of the shit. Like they had already co-opted it, and it didn't take long. That's why you need class analysis because it literally took less than 4 years for them to have co-opted a movement that legitimately scared the ruling class out of their fucking ends. Like have now has them making whole cities. Like I'm not saying cop cities didn't exist before, but god damn, the Black Lives Matter fuel for these cop cities, it was like gas on the fire.
Yeah. Yeah, going back to what you said about how the state only has two options. One is to repress a movement, and the second is to, sort of absorb it and sell it back to you. I think that was spot on the money, right? Like how many times are we sold, liberation, like, Khloe Kardashian's Pepsi commercial, like if you remember
Bruh,
that
that's
stupid ass shit.
crazy. Yeah, I still think about that commercial, and I'm just like, there's no way they were like, we're gonna green light this. This is what the people need.
I,
Um,
and that was in the middle of Black Lives Matter, wasn't it? Like,
this shit was so bad. Like it was like so tone deaf. It's like I don't think you guys understand the protests. I think you need to come out to a couple more. Like,
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, but the state will crush a movement and then sell it back to you as with its balls cut off. Like with a lot of its oomph cut off. It'll dull the blade, that revolutionary knife that was cutting at the system. It'll dull it into just a butter knife or nothing. Um, and I think I have been within education spaces, especially around the Bay Area. I'm not an educator myself, but I work within schools, and they've done that with the Black Panthers. In case you don't know, especially within the Bay Area, where the Black Panthers originated from, the state absolutely crushed the Black Panthers. But now the Black Panthers are presented within every school and taught within every school, but they're taught as these like liberal darlings, right? Like
crazy work, bro.
yeah, yeah, no, they'll never mention the socialist aspects of the Black Panthers. They'll never mention their revolutionary rhetoric. They'll never mention that they were class conscious. All they mention about the Black Panthers is that they were fighting for black rights, right? And that is true, but you're completely ignoring the class aspect of it. It's what they've done to
Yep.
Martin Luther King. It's what they never did that to Malcolm X, I think, because Malcolm X was too honest and too upfront. But it's they've dulled the knife of what the Black Panthers represented.
Absolutely. You know what's crazy? Like you said, you're in the Bay, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so like, I actually was not taught about the Black Panther. I'm from South Florida originally.
Mhm.
The South, like, it's like Confederate flags are being flying from trucks. The South, so our school curriculum never covered the Black Panthers like that. So we didn't even get the sanitized version. Didn't even get the sanitized version, which is crazy. But it makes sense that because of where you are and how prominent they are. I've been to the Bay like once for my birthday, and the murals out there, dude. Like they got a whole Black Panther museum out there, if I'm not mistaken. They
Hmm.
got a bunch of stuff out there that's very Black Panther centric. There's a whole coffee shop over there that won't even serve cops. Um, very, very much the politic of the Black Panther is alive over there. But that's why it makes sense that the education system sanitized the fuck out of their image, because otherwise word of mouth culture and an understanding of that would have taken over, would have been the actual narrative of the Black Panthers, the real narrative.
Absolutely, and the way I see these kids, learning about the Black Panthers, they're bored, right? Because
Man.
they've made the Black Panthers so non-revolutionary, non-radical, these kids, they don't even care. They're just like, "Oh, yeah, it's just another history person like General Taft or, Howard or,
Wow,
you
that's
know."
crazy.
And it's like,
That's
if
crazy.
it's like, if you actually taught these kids about what the Black Panthers really were like, these kids would be invigorated. They would be
Bro,
excited.
you tell them about how they pulled up with sticks, watched them motherfucking pigs, like made sure their community was safe, made sure their community was fed. You talk about that shit for real. Yeah, these kids are gonna be invigorated. That's actually kind of what I'm working on for a summer program, um, for some kids out here. Not too long, like a 2-week program where we could like teach. There's a lot of Black Panther history out here. I'm actually there's actually a grave over here of Bunchy's grave. Al Bunchy. He was a famous Black Panther. But
Mhm.
like, there's so much history over here. We're trying to work on the summer program to keep these kids invigorated because the stories are good. They're really good. Like the work they put in. It's these are stories that literally will leave these kids on the edge of their seats if you tell it right. If you tell it in a revolutionary light. But they're not trying to do that shit. They're trying to co-opt the image, the understanding, and all that.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's speaking about how, easy it is to buy off people who are completely, identity based, right? There's no class consciousness there. And, I think throughout this podcast, me and you have, emphasized that you need both, right? And class should always be the main basis, but you need intersectionality and identity. But you can't have only identity and you can't have only class, the two kinds of class reductionism. Um, my first, interaction with, the Black Lives Matter movement was in my community college. Let's say like 2021-ish, 2020. I can't really give you a time frame, but we're all called into a meeting and the professor's saying, "Yeah, there's this Black Lives Matter activist here and she got paid $30,000 by the college to be here, to speak," or something like that sort. And when she was speaking, this organizer, she was very bored. She didn't seem like she wanted to be there, right? She didn't really answer any questions, anything whatsoever. And I really just saw, the impression that I got. That was my first impression of the Black Lives Matter movement was these guys aren't actually, these guys are just, uh, posers, and I hate to say
Man,
that.
bro, social climbers,
I know.
social climbers, and it's really a shame because, and I've said it so many times, but I'm trying to be compassionate because
Mhm.
I understand wanting better for your people and not knowing what to do. But at a certain point, dog, like if you really don't feel it, if you don't believe what you're saying, because when I talk about revolution, I truly believe that shit. I know it's possible. I know it's the only thing that will liberate my people. I truly believe this. If you aren't someone who truly believes it, there's another role for you in community. There is another role for you. It's not being a grifter. It's not taking up space. It's not, yeah. And you got that, you get that a lot, unfortunately, with the Black Lives Matter movement. You got that a lot. And you see all these conservatives turned up like, oh, look at this, look at the Black Lives Matter person's mansion. How did that stop police brutality? Like, damn, now I have to somewhat side with this with this redneck fuck. Like,
Mm,
why is he making sense?
mm.
What did you actually do with the money that they gave you to push this Black Lives Matter stuff? What are you actually doing? Because the cameras and shit aren't helping. So, and it's because they don't have any class analysis. They don't have any basis on why police brutality persists and will continue to persist.
Mm.
So they're just up there talking in useless nothings, like and euphemisms and things of that nature. And you know what? Sometimes that language is appropriate, especially during protests and things like that, but not at a fucking seminar. You should be talking theory and shit like that. But $30,000 is crazy.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah, yeah, and it's just, and I don't want to talk about bad about, I don't want to say that this person is indicative of everybody within the movement. I know there were many, many passionate organizers within Black Lives Matter that still are doing great work today.
Still are.
Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. But we could be real about the movement and what direction it's we could be real about the cohabitation. Cohabitation, I'm sorry, I'm the conjugation of these words just fucking me up. But we can be real about the co-opting of it. We can. And we should be. We should be. Because at the end of the day, Black lives still matter. Like it does. Like the saying still goes stupid. Yeah, we snapped.
Mhm.
But let's be fucking real about where that movement, the direction it went, because it very much was co opted by the Democrats. They were definitely, I actually don't remember Democrats saying it per se, but they were up there in them kente cloths kneeling and shit, bro. Like they were doing they were doing their big one, bro. They were doing their big one. They co opted the shit big time, bro.
When Nancy Pelosi and
Yes,
Democrats
bro.
were
You know exactly what
kneeling.
Tom's talking. Bro, that is like on par. Yeah, I know you saw recently the Democrats were in the Congress or whatever. They were singing "We Shall Overcome."
Yeah, 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 yeah. Or the pink
Bro,
shirts.
that is literally the exact same image to me. It is the exact same thing. Like when I heard that's what happened, I was just like, do they think we're stupid? Like I like that's just an insult to me as a black person and my intelligence. I'm sorry, bro. There's no fucking way Nancy Pelosi's up there in a kente cloth kneeling and she thinks that's enough.
She
That
wore
that
she wore a fucking kente cloth. She fucking kneeled for Black Lives Matter, and then she passed legislation for police cities. Like,
like, bro, legitimately, I'm just like, oh, you're just, bro, yeah,
I think the memeability of that image is so that image persists. That is like, and I think a lot of liberals actually in that moment understand how bullshit liberalism is and how bullshit this like liberal identity politics are, like how unstructured they are.
yes,
I think that was really a wake up call. Like people still clown on that today. Even people who support the Democratic Party still clown on that image today because it was just okay. How the fuck you gotta be kneeling in a kente cloth, fucking all that shit, and then you're gonna pass police city shit. Like how the fuck?
bro.
How, you,
The contradiction is just like it's like it's barely even a contradiction. It's like you're just lying to my face.
of course,
You're not even like putting your best foot forward. You're
you
just
know.
pretending right now. And I think a lot of people are getting that with the "we shall overcome" shit too. I'm seeing a lot of people in my community actually like cringe, like go, what the fuck? Like the Democrats really dropped the ball this time. It's great to see. Uh playing on their downfall type shit. But it's great to see because people are, I don't want to say they're getting class consciousness, but I think the facade is just they can't do anything but pander to us now.
I know.
And I think people are tired of being pandered to.
Look. There's two options right now. There's Kente Cloth Pelosi and Khloe Kardashian Pepsi commercial, or
Yes,
there's like
exactly.
there's like being in the streets, like there's interpretive dances at the Capitol, and then there's actually protesting, like
Right.
actually going on.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, and those are the two options. And the Democrats, they love that. Honestly, the Khloe Kardashian Pepsi commercial, that was the Democratic Party right there, like to a T. Like she, and also, fuck, I hate to go back to that commercial, but she literally, the message of that commercial was that black people and policemen can get along, right? Like that was
Bro,
the
she
message.
shared the Pepsi with the cop. What the fuck? She gave the Pepsi, and this is a white woman too. It's like, yo, what? I know your white ass ain't giving this Pepsi to this cop. Like, what is up with this messaging? What is the message? What is it? Like, oh my god, that
Okay.
commercial, bro.
Okay, to be fair, she is Armenian. Okay, like half Armenian. Okay,
Got you,
so
got you, got
yeah,
you.
like it is an oppressed group, but you know, it's she's also a multi fucking millionaire. Like, let's
Yeah,
be clear.
yeah, yeah. I'm
Okay.
like, what's happening, bro? Like, yeah, it's
They couldn't even find a black person to do it. They couldn't even
bro,
find like a they had to.
bro. Good cop, bad cop type shit. They try to do that narrative, and it's just like,
I know.
yeah.
I know everything about that Pepsi commercial. Just it's a classic. That's what I'll say. It's a liberal classic. Anyways, honestly, moving on. Actually, sort of seen Black liberation and the aesthetics of Black liberation commodified within Kendrick's performance at like the Super Bowl. Do you think that there is anything positive about Black liberation aesthetics going mainstream? Like, I have seen a lot of discourse about Kendrick's performance at the Super Bowl, and some people actually saying like there were some radical messages here that could have some utility, or do you think it's all bad? Like there's no positives to it going mainstream, being commodified this way?
Okay, so like when I first had this question, I was very quick to say like it's bad.
Mm,
It's bad. It's point blank period bad. But I was recently on a Black liberation panel, and during our discussion about Black excellence, the Black Panther movie came up, and how even though it's Disney slop, it did inspire a lot of Black people globally. And when I first heard this, like one of the panelists brought this up, and when I first heard it, I was reluctant to it. But then I think about Kendrick Lamar and how his songs, like, he has songs like High Power. There are plenty of songs where, like, especially in my younger days when I wasn't a communist, he has plenty of songs that kept me in that radical line
mm,
or framework. Like, to the point where that's where I knew I was going to be a black communist. Like his song High Power, he mentions Freddie Hampton. He mentions Malcolm X. He mentions Huey. He mentions all these people, and we can see that he didn't follow any of their examples. He didn't follow them by any means. But the fact that he was putting it in his music, it was him. It was him, the Absols of the world. These people who aren't activists, they aren't necessarily, I wouldn't even say woke, like point blank period. They don't really have a woke rhetoric, but they do get into pockets sometimes. I do think that was reaffirming to me at certain points in time in my life. It got those gears of liberation turning.
yeah, yeah.
I do think we have to be mindful if they are not talking about socialism or communism, the message isn't actually radical, it's cathartic.
Mm,
And sometimes that's fine. That's okay. Like with the Super Bowl performance, some people just liked it because it was dope. But I think the reason why the Kendrick Lamar performance is bad, like that's kind of my line, is it's bad, is because it re-legitimized the establishment.
mm.
Like it's kind of hard to say how the Black Panther re-legitimized the establishment, other than it was a fucking Disney movie that played into royalty and things of that nature, hierarchical understandings. Okay, that's a good critique, but Kendrick was legitimately part of one of the biggest American propaganda events ever. And he was talking about 40 acres and a mule. This is bigger than the music. The revolution is starting and you picked the wrong guy. No, I think at that point in time, it's okay to say he's appropriating.
Mm, okay. Yeah, because I will say that it was a good jumping off point for some conversations, like going back to the Black Panthers being de-radicalized within schools. Sometimes it was a jumping off point for some kids to think a little bit further. Like you said, like when it's aestheticized and it's commodified, it loses a lot of that original radical meaning. But for some people, it does get that ball turning. Like I had like a little Mexican boy who was like a migrant. Like he came up to me. He's like, "Oh, is socialism good?" Like, and it just started conversations like that, right? You know.
Hell yeah, bro. Hell yeah.
So that, and I have seen a lot of people turn Kendrick Lamar's performance into a jumping off point for conversations about black liberation, socialism, communism, but the performance in and of itself was not radical. That's what I can say. And the real radical moment, the real liberatory moment that came was not from Kendrick, but his backup dancer,
Yeah.
Zul Namtambudu. I'm sorry, I fucked up his name, but he held up a flag, a free Gaza and free Sudan flag, and he
Yep.
got banned from every single NFL game ever. Like that was the real,
Arrested first.
yeah.
He was arrested first, and thankfully they dropped the charges on him. I had a bunch of people talking about they didn't really have any real charges on him. He got banned from all the NFL events, but literally that was the most radical thing that someone did. That whole thing, like the whole um the whole Americana aesthetic that Kendrick is aligning himself with, I think is very dangerous. Um I just like point blank period. I think it's very dangerous and purposeful. I
Mm,
do believe that we are being manipulated at this point in time. Like this is what I talk about when I say my conspiracy back, because you know the ruling class is never going to tell it how it is all the time. Sometimes you need to connect dots. You just see patterns, and I think, yeah, the most revolutionary thing Kendrick did on that stage, well, was nothing. Was fucking nothing. Was his dancer doing it?
It was accidentally giving Nambu a platform. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I agree with that. I think ultimately these things, revolutionary aesthetics, they don't do much, but they do give us an opportunity to have discussions with people about why it's not actually revolutionary and why we can do so much more. Right.
Right.
That's the utility, I'll say. Um, okay. So let's say, elevator pitch, right? Lex, let's say you're talking to somebody who's a little bit of a liberal-ish minded. Tell them why Black liberation is tied to Palestine, is tied to Sudan, is tied to Congo, is tied to Puerto Rico, is tied to disabled people, is tied to capitalism. How are these all interconnected?
Um, Elevator pitch. I'm hoping to play on the person's sympathy, if I'm being completely honest, because you that should be the first thing. I think that's like you should care about other people, like point blank people who don't look like you. You should care about other people. But if you don't care about other people in that sense, I'm not saying you're a monster. You're a monster. No, I'm playing. But if you don't care about people in the other sense, you have to understand that no one is free until like we're all free. I know it's a cliche, and but it's a cliche for a reason. Like it might not be your people right now, but you or your people will be the next victims of capitalism, so long as you continue to let capitalism have a slave class, because it's with that slave class that the capitalist, the opportunist builds their wealth, their power, their capital to gain leverage necessary to further exploit people. It's like math. It's math. If you let these people, if you let these people bully these people, exploit these people's labor to make themselves rich, and then eventually they wipe those people out and take all the wealth of those people and accumulate it for themselves. Now they're standing on a higher hill than you. You know what I'm saying? It gives them more opportunity to do the exact same thing, because now they've already built, like when you think about America, America is a very young country, but somehow became the world dollar. How did that happen? How did America actually get to the top? They had a whole fucking empire. They had the whole British Empire, who I wouldn't say is their enemies, but they're not trying to give up their spot. You know what I'm saying? They're not trying to give up their sovereignty and all that stuff, but somehow they did. And it's because America stole people's labor, like point blank period. They didn't have to pay a bunch of people, so a bunch of people got super fucking ultra rich, and then started realizing that they could do the same type of pillaging and exploitation all over the world. And that's why we have imperialism and things of that nature. All this quote unquote money, you know what I'm saying, all these funds, all this wealth, it was all taken. It was all taken. So it's just like, if you can't understand why you should care about Congo and the Palestinian people, because it's fucked up what's happening to them, if you can't get on that hard line, understand that the people who are doing that shit are the exact same reason why we are drinking like fecal matter water. You know what I'm saying? Why the
Yeah.
Supreme Court just voted to put poop in our water. Why the police cities are building up. Like They're the reason. These are the same people. The same people who are keeping them poor are the same people keeping us poor,
Mm.
and they're pitting us against each other to rationalize why we're being poor. Like that's the best elevator pitch I can do without screaming in someone's face like you should fucking care. But yeah, man, it's just like it's the natural progression. It's not even about people being evil too, and that's what I want people to understand. Is like the world isn't evil. Well, take it with a grain of salt. There are definitely evil people, but essentially, what like capitalism is a math. It is a math equation. It's really that simple. You allow people to get exploited. Eventually, the same people who were doing the exploiting to those people will come around and exploit other people. And if you're too powerful right now, just give it some time. Just give it some time. Turn your blind eye to that capitalism, and that capitalist will be big enough to fuck with you eventually.
Yeah. I think it's very naive that you can think that the very same court that, for example, will rule that slavery within the DRC is okay, for American companies to do is suddenly gonna give a fuck about you. Like it
Man,
it's very naive to think that the same politician that has no problem, no qualms about killing Palestinian babies in cold blood cares about your babies, right? Like
yeah.
if they can throw away a human life abroad, they can throw away your human life. And when they get the chance, like you've been saying all throughout this episode, when they get a chance to abandon you, they will fucking abandon you. They are only
Yep.
with you. They're only standing with you out of convenience. They're only standing with you out of convenience and that they temporarily need you. But it is temporary. And eventually they will eat you. They will abandon you, just like they abandoned the kid, just like they killed the kids in Palestine, just like they killed the kids in the Congo. They do not need the second they do no longer need you, they will abandon you. They do not like you. They're not with you because they like you or they think you're special. But that's what I'll say. A little bit meaner. That's a way meaner way of saying it, basically. But it gets sort of the thought process across. Uh,
Right.
yeah. Moving on. Um, Lex, do you think that black nationalism is inherently revolutionary? Can there be any dangers to it, like figures like, Dr. Umar, who will say, I think questionable reactionary kind of things.
Um. First, I want to say that Black Umar, Dr. Umar is not a black nationalist.
Mm,
I think not even close. I think the rhetoric of we need our own community, we need to be self sufficient, we need to think economically. Things of those like things of those nature are definitely black nationalist thinking points, talking points, but you can't devolve that from the capitalist structure, and that's something that Umar does all the time, which is why I would never call him a black nationalist.
mm,
um I do believe there is some utility out of all the things like we were talking on here of does it have utility. I do believe that black nationalism serves some sort of utility. um Personally for me, I wouldn't consider myself a black nationalist, but I would never look down on a black nationalist, especially because I see the community work they do, the people they talk to, the people they make less reactionary. Um, there are definitely dangers to it, like the Dr. Umar. You got the people who co-opt it, the sensationalists who get on here and say all the right things, but don't have any actual plan or economic understanding. But there is some revolutionary potential to black nationalism. Um, I will say this though: I think we are waiting for that black nationalist effort. I think we are still in the crux of people building an understanding of how black nationalism could actually benefit our community. I still think we are in like, you got a lot of like Dr. Umar's a fucking grifter. Like that man has taken so much money from the community. He is a grifter. But we're getting there. I think we're getting there. I think there will be a point in time where black nationalism will absolutely be purposeful,
yeah.
um, and useful.
Yeah, because going to the Leninist definitions of nationalism, nationalism is really always almost like an attempt by the bourgeois to like get rid of to connect a group of people that otherwise wouldn't be connected on a class basis. But nationalism is revolutionary when it stands up against imperialism and sometimes stands up against capitalism, because there are certain groups within the world that find their national liberation opposed to world capitalism and imperialism. And so, like, like, you can think of the Vietnamese people, the entire brunt force, or even the Palestinian people currently, the entire brunt force of world imperialism and capitalism was against the people of Vietnam and the people of Palestine, and their liberation became tied to anti-capitalism and the liberation of all of humanity, right? Their own liberation. And I think that is one aspect of black nationalism that, like, we've talked about throughout this episode, right? Like, black people are the contradiction of the American empire, and their liberation will be tied to liberation for all
Yep.
these groups, right? So that is a positive
Absolutely.
impact of black nationalism. But there's also a reactionary side of black nationalism that is utilized by the national black bourgeoisie, right? And that reactionary aspect is uh, manifests itself through Dr. Umar and these more and I know you said he's not a real black nationalist. He uses like black nationalist rhetoric, but he's not really. But they'll use these very reactionary talking points to divert away this very real feeling, right? It's the right feelings, it's the right intentions, but it's the wrong solution, is the way I'll.
Man,
Yeah.
there it is right there. Like black people's right to self-determination in this country. There's not anybody in a revolutionary space that is saying boo to that. You know what I'm saying? Well, actually, let me stop. Let me not speak too broadly, but like, yes, we deserve that shit. We're gonna take that shit. Absolutely. How we go about this shit is all that matters. We can all want it. We all want it, but it's not enough to want it. You got to know how to do it. And um these a lot of black nationalists struggle with systemic solutions rather than individual praxis.
Mm,
And at certain points, absolutely, the individual matters. The individual must make a choice, and that choice will lead to further solidarity for black people. Absolutely. Um, not even well, like definitely when it comes to race, like absolutely, we will need to make a choice individually. But these individual choices will not supersede our the structures that are shaping us. You know what I'm saying? We need to address that first. Something I think a lot of black nationalists need to get into is addressing the structures first before the individual. Um, Dr. Umar is one of those people who definitely has a lot to say about individuals rather than structural change and things of that nature.
mm, mm. I'll also say that, going back to everything you've been saying, when you're completely identity based and you have no class structure, you can be so easily co-opted, and also you can end up with weird conclusions, like, being pro-gay is anti-black or black liberation. This isn't within our community, and just reactionary tendencies like that that get pushed by figures like Dr. Umar, that or
You start playing eugenics. No,
yeah,
legit. You start
yeah.
playing eugenics on and that's in large part, well, not in large part. Let me not disrespect, because I'm trying not to step on toes of people who are doing work. You know what I'm saying? Because I do believe socialism is the solution, but as a socialist, I know I'm going to have to interact and intermingle with people who don't get my politics all the way, because that's the people, that's the working class. Those are our people. But with the foundational Black Americans movement or the ADOS movement, these type of you just end up perpetuating the exact same eugenic understanding, the white supremacist understanding of ethnicity and just ethnic diversity. You end up a race realist sometimes
Mm,
if you don't address the capitalist contradiction first. You end up a race realist in your solutions, as well as you might have the right you might have the right understanding, but when it comes to solutions, it becomes a very race realist solution that you start talking about. You start forgetting that with the FBA, especially, that you start to forget that, like, you are no longer demanding things, you are pleading to your oppressor. You're like you're making cahoots with your oppressor to the point where now you're dividing the community more than it needs to be. You're saying that being gay is anti-black. You cut off like 30% of the community. You know what I'm saying? You've alienated 30% of the community right now.
Absolutely.
How are we going to ever have a nationalist movement when you're alienating us further? You're doing exactly the type of divisive work that stops our movements because we know how powerful our movements are. You're doing the exact same work. So absolutely, it circles back to some reactionary bullshit, some self-satisfying reactionary bullshit.
That's completely individualized. That's completely no
Yes.
structural, no structural at all. Yeah. How do we feel about the phrase "Black Queens forever, Snow Bunnies never"? That how do we feel about that? What are the thoughts?
Black queens forever, snow bunnies never. I get where he's coming from. I get where he's coming from to some extent. Um, but not really. Like, hey man, like black love. I like. It's gonna sound corny, but black love is radical. It's not revolutionary, but it is radical to deny your programming and to love a black person because we are programmed to not want black people. We are absolutely programmed to be anti-black or to want a specific type of black person. A black person that make checks all these like a complete dehumanization of what it means to be black, but also human. Um, so like he be wilding, but like I get the understanding of wanting black people to be together. Especially when so many of these snow bunnies be so trifling, man. Like, man.
uh, it's uh, I'm no more comments. I don't have any more comments. I'm just gonna stay out of that.
uh,
All right. All right. So Lex, just to round it off, what is the future you hope to see for America, Black Americans, white Americans, Hispanic Americans, just everybody? What's the future you are fighting for?
the future is socialism. The future is communism. And it's possible. I want us to like, I want us to hear that shit. Like, and not just hear it, believe that shit. It's possible. There's a reason why the ruling class is acting the way they are acting right now. There's a reason why you see all like we have names to faces right now. There's reasons why billionaires are getting whacked off, like just you know,
Mhm.
Luigi timed. There's a reason why all this is happening, and it's because the border, what am I saying? Not the border, the line between the classes is more apparent than ever. Shout out to Trump. Shout out to Elon Musk because these men are so arrogant and American. Funny enough, Elon is South African, but the colonizer energy is so potent and powerful. You can see the class divide. You can see how some of these people, even the people who are telling you they give a fuck about you, they actually don't. They don't give a fuck
Mhm.
about you more than they give a fuck about their paycheck or their job. You know what I'm saying? Like the future is good. I know it's hard to see because we have so much genocide. We are complicit in so much violence. I know it's hard, but the future is socialism. The future is bright. For Black America specifically, we do have some work to do, but like with every other movement in this country, the moment we get to actually getting to the shit, to the actual class consciousness shit, there's nothing that's gonna stop us. There's
Mhm.
nothing that's gonna stop us. And I feel like this movement is gonna be the next Black American movement centered around socialism. Shout out to the Panthers. Shout out to all the efforts after that and going on currently. The next movement will be the one to crack this shit. It will be
Yeah.
to crack this shit. Um, and it's not only because I believe it, it's because there's no other way. I like it's no other way. I don't really believe in like techno feudalism and all that shit, or I think capitalism is just gonna get exponentially worse. But really, like, there's no other way, bro. There's no other way. AI is not AI is not changing shit that much. It should. It absolutely should, but at the end of the day, anti-blackness is still a force, and we need to address it in full, not in part.
Absolutely. I think for the first time, the Trump administration is waking a lot of Americans up, especially, white working class Americans who before have been so easily divided from that working class struggle. LBJ's the greatest thing that LBJ ever said, and LBJ, I don't like him. He started the Vietnam War. He was a son of a bitch. But the greatest thing he ever said was, "You can pick a white man's pocket if you can convince him to hate a black man." Right. And I think to some extent, thanks to the Trump administration's sheer incompetence, for the first time, white Americans and veterans, even like veterans, just these groups that have traditionally been support structures of American capitalism, have
Yeah,
suddenly woken up and they're like, God damn, I have the same exact interest as black people. I have the same exact interest as Mexican people. I can't say, the near future looks bright, but I can't say there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And
absolutely, man.
yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, like the he really is like, I feel like especially with black Americans, we're always kind of privy. That's why I think most of us don't vote. That's why I think we really do just because you talk to these old heads out here, they'll tell you exactly why they didn't vote for Kamala. And it's got nothing to do with Palestine. I'm gonna be honest with you.
Mhm.
Most of them don't even like the media's been really good about keeping the conflict, quote unquote, conflict narrative going, but they don't feel truly represented in this system. They don't truly feel change will come from this system. So, they're just they're on the back burner waiting, I think, waiting for someone to offer a real solution. That's what I truly believe. Um
And they're looking for a solution beyond the Democrats, right? Like, that's
yes.
the thing. The Democrats cannot solve people's fucking problems. All they can
Yep.
offer you is aesthetics. All the Republicans can offer you is fucking aesthetics. And it's either I'll put a blackface on the top of the empire or I will get rid of minorities, right? Like I'll get rid of DEI and Mexican migrants. And neither of these are solutions to the falling rate of profit. Neither of these are solutions to the reserve army of labor. Neither of these are solutions to alienation. Neither of these are solutions to, everything bad about capitalism, class struggle, things like that. They can never solve the issues of capitalism. And the only way, you got to give people these fucking solutions. And the only solutions they know right now are conservative, liberal. The only solutions they know right now are Democrat,
Right.
Republican. And you got to give them a new solution that actually tackles the problems, because this is what I've always said. No matter how much racist or transphobic a person is, and of course those are not okay, and we do have to push back on these tendencies. We can't be like MAGA communists who will like reflect the reactionary tendencies of the American working class and be like,
Yeah.
you know what? I hate gay people too. Let's do communism and hate gay people together. Yeah.
Yeah, just
Uh,
kind of like, okay, I think you missed like couple. I think you missed key steps on unifying working class people. I think you missed it, but
yeah.
yeah, no, I hear you.
But one thing I've always said is some food in somebody's mouth is a lot more important than them being transphobic, right? Like food.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you go to an RV park right now and you told somebody we can get food into your mouths, you just have to stand with the trans community, they would stand with the trans community, right? Like solidarity. You know,
Absolutely, bro. The person serving the food could be trans.
absolutely.
Because people are a lot different, like we were talking about earlier, people are a lot different in person than when they can be online and portray like this bravado. They're just their ego. It's a lot different. They talk to people a lot different.
Mm.
Because they see the person, don't get me wrong, there are definitely those bigots. But I think a lot of people, they kind of just need food in their mouths, absolutely. But how I roll is like our party, our party is diverse. You know what I'm saying? Our party does have trans women. Our party does have disabled people. It's like we're the working class, bro. Once they see the working class in their face and standing with them, even when they're not trying to stand with us, like don't get us wrong, like you said, we are not allowing racists, we are not allowing transphobes, we're not allowing sexist ableist people. We're not allowing that shit. We don't allow that shit. But when it comes to providing aid, like there was a fire over here. We are not asking who you voted for when we're passing out clothes and food and water. When the Democrats just let your house get fucking burned. I know it's not Democrats exactly. I know Edison dropped the ball with their maintenance and shit like that. But the state, the people who are governing us, all that shit, when they drop the ball and let your house get engulfed in flames because they don't know how to cut some fucking grass, they don't know how to tend to the land because they've got rid of the indigenous populations, they stopped listening to the community. We're in their face. We're in their face with aid. We're in their face with understanding why this shit has happened. Like we're helping with the legal side of things so people can actually sue these motherfuckers. Like that matters, bro. That shit matters. And I feel like that changes a lot more people's opinions than social media.
Mm, mm. Yeah. I mean, I will say capitalism does discriminate, but also the bad effects of capitalism do not discriminate, right?
Man, bro.
Everybody gets unemployed. Everybody gets fucked over by climate change. Everybody gets uh, it's both. Capitalism does discriminate, but the bad effects of capitalism also do not discriminate in many
It
ways. Yeah.
like it's going to hit you. Like
Yeah.
even if it like it's like in my example, like the capitalists will just get more power to exploit and influence to exploit you eventually. It does. Like, and it's only going to get worse with things like neglecting the earth. The neglect capitalism does to the earth, yeah, bro, that is going to come back. And we see that with how Texas freezes over every fucking year. We see that with how California is on fire every fucking year. People losing their lives, their livelihoods. Yeah, yeah, it eventually comes to you. And the wealth gap, like shit, it's only going to get worse. It is only going to get worse until we address the solution in full.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's been a lot of attempts to redirect the class struggle when the fires happened in LA. What was Trump's first thing to say? Oh, it's because the fire chief is gay or lesbian, like
Bro, she got fired too.
didn't she
Um,
die?
No, 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 no. She got fired. I'm pretty sure she got fired by the mayor here.
Oh,
And what was hilarious is like weeks prior to the fire chief getting, and I might be talking about another chief than you, but weeks prior to the fire chief getting fired, articles were going back up, going back viral of Karen Bass slashing like 100. Karen Bass is our mayor in LA. She slashed like $157 million from the fire department. So it's just like what the fuck is going on? There's no solutions. Like well, these people aren't offering solutions. There's solutions, but these people aren't offering us the solution. And I think a lot of people are seeing that shit now. That's why they stayed their ass home when it came time to vote, if you ask me.
mm, mm. Yeah, I did a quick Google search because I could have sworn somebody in the LA fire department was murdered. It wasn't her, but looking at these articles right now, like the Republican, liberal articles, they're so funny because it's like one of them is like, the lesbian fire department chief shows that gay people can get it done, and then the other one is like why we shouldn't have lesbians in fire departments. We need a man there. And it's like, that's not the issue. The issue is that Karen Bass, defunded the fire department for the police, like,
Literally, the Edison fucking power line people took all that profit they be making and didn't do no type of maintenance. It is the same thing it always fucking is. The fucking rich fucking fucking over everybody and then the state coming to protect them.
yeah. Yeah. Honestly, that's the thing I hate about fucking privatization is you still have to pay taxes, but it goes to like a private company. So it's just
Yo,
run
like
worse. Yeah. Like
it
it
just
doesn't.
doesn't make sense. And when you talk about it often, like you just like you get that's why I say you need that optimism. You need to be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel because you will sit there mad as fuck, mad as fuck that all this shit is going on and you really have no power to do anything about it, but bitch about it. And it's just like that's why you got to get in org. That's why you got to actually put what little power you have to work. Talk. talk to your community, inform them, bro. Like little shit matters because we all need to be on the same page. Like we don't need the whole country on the same page, but we need enough of us to be on the same page to be like, actually, no, this is not a solution. This is this is actually really fucking stupid. We should do something different.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Lex, thank you so much for coming on. Tell the people where they can find you online. I know the TikTok gods have been coming down on you. Tell them
Bro.
t- you're what account are you on? Like third, fourth?
No, this is my second, bro. This is only my
Oh,
second
okay,
account.
okay, okay, okay.
I know you're on like what account are you on?
I'm on my third. I'm on my third.
Yeah, man, they come down on us hard. I'm on Vex Loser on TikTok. I'm on Lex Loser on Instagram. I'm sorry, it's a lot of things. And I'm working on long form content for YouTube. I already got a couple of videos up there. Small talks kills. Small talk kills on YouTube. Small talk kills on YouTube.
Do you have
Yeah.
any in-person events coming on? Any panels, things like that?
Nah, man, that one panel I went on was a blessing. I didn't even know people thought of me like that.
Okay.
But yeah, that's it for now. No in-person events. But if you guys are ever in LA, hit me up, bro. I can find some work for you to get into. Like shit. We can get some shit cracking for real.
Yes, yeah, of course, of course. I'll link your Instagram, I'll link your TikTok so people can follow what you do and how to contact you and all that. You have a good one, Lex.
I appreciate you, Preet. Have a good one, bro.
Yeah. Black Queens forever, Nobody's never.
Amen. Amen.
This episode of the Pokepreet Pod has been brought to you by our generous members on our Patreon. If you'd like to become one of them, go to patreon.com/thepokepreetpod. Thank you. What the fuck? Glory to Stalin, I barely made it. And a special shout out to our Marshal of the Soviet Union member, Matthias T. If you'd also like a shout out, please consider subscribing to our Patreon, where you can also get episodes up to a month early. Thank you.